This is the story of the biggest store in American history and the one man who ended up on every side of its collapse. When Sears finally went bankrupt in 2018, it wasn't a surprise. What's surprising is the structure underneath it. For the last years of its life, the same man was the company's CEO, its largest shareholder, its biggest lender, and, through a company he chaired, its landlord. Every check Sears wrote, there was a decent chance his name was somewhere near it. His defenders say he spent billions trying to save a dying retailer. Its creditors in court called it something very different. This is the liquidation files. Open the folder, this one's thick. First, understand what Sears was, because younger viewers genuinely cannot picture it. Sears wasn't a store. Sears was Amazon, a century early. Starting in the 1890s, the Sears catalog delivered anything you could imagine to any doorstep in America. Tools, dresses, appliances. For decades, it was the largest retailer on earth. It created Craftsman tools, Kenmore appliances, the Die-Hard battery. In 1973, it built the tallest building in the world and put its name on it. If you wanted to explain 20th century American shopping in one word, the word was Sears. Now the man. Eddie Lampert, hedge fund manager, billionaire, founder of ESL Investments, once called the next Warren Buffett. His entry point wasn't Sears at all, it was Kmart. When Kmart went bankrupt in 2002, Lampert bought up its debt for cents on the dollar, and when the company came out of bankruptcy in 2003, that debt converted into control. He now owned a discount retailer. 2 years later, in 2005, he merged it with Sears in an $11 billion deal, creating Sears Holdings, 3,500 stores, hundreds of thousands of employees, and a stated mission of taking on Walmart. Here's the first fork in the road, and it's the quietest one. A retailer in a fight for its life has to invest, renovate stores, fix supply chains, build online. Instead, in its first years, Sears Holdings spent nearly $6 billion buying back its own stock. Buybacks shrink the share count and support the stock price, which is excellent news if you happen to be the largest shareholder. Meanwhile, the stores aged. Ask anyone who walked into a Sears in the 2010s, flickering lights, empty shelves, cracked floors. That wasn't an accident of bad luck. It was capital going one direction instead of the other. By 2013, Lampert had made himself CEO, a hedge fund manager running America's most famous retailer, largely from an office in Florida, appearing to headquarters mostly by video link. And under his leadership, Sears began to shrink in a very particular way, piece by piece, with the pieces landing in interesting places. 2014. Sears spins off Land's End, one of its most profitable brands. Creditors later alleged in court that an outside group had offered $1.6 billion in cash for the brand, and that Lampert chose the spinoff instead, a route that kept a huge stake in his own hands, which the lawsuit valued at roughly $490 million to him. Cash offer for the company, or spinoff to the shareholders, of which he was by far the largest. The spinoff won. 2015, the big one. Sears created a real estate investment trust called Seritage Growth Properties and sold it 266 of its best store locations for $2.7 billion, then leased the stores back and started paying rent on buildings it used to own. If you've seen our Red Lobster file, you know this maneuver, the sale leaseback. But Sears added a twist Red Lobster never had. The chairman of Seritage, the landlord, was Eddie Lampert. The CEO of Sears, the tenant, was Eddie Lampert. The same man stood on both sides of the lease. In the years that followed, Sears paid hundreds of millions of dollars in rent to Seritage. Creditors later alleged the properties had been sold for at least $649 million below their real value. Shareholders had already sued over the deal and won a $40 million settlement back in 2017. 2017. Craftsman, the crown jewel tool brand Sears had owned for 90 years, sold off to Stanley Black & Decker to raise cash. And through it all, there was the debt. As Sears bled money, it borrowed to stay alive, and a striking amount of that lending came from Lampert and ESL themselves, secured against Sears assets. Between 2016 and 2018 alone, court filings say Sears paid more than $400 million in interest and fees on loans from Lampert, his affiliates, and others. Read that structure back slowly. The CEO's fund lends money to the company the CEO runs, collects interest from it, and holds claims on its assets if it fails. Whatever happened to Sears the retailer, win or lose, the lender got paid. October 15, 2018. Sears Holdings filed for bankruptcy, down from 3,500 stores to about 700, from over 300,000 employees to 68,000. Lampert stepped down as CEO the same day and then did something that made the whole country do a double take. He bought it. Through an ESL affiliate called Transform Co., Lampert acquired the remaining stores out of bankruptcy for $5.2 billion over the loud objection of creditors because as the company's biggest secured lender, he was first in line at the very bankruptcy his company had just entered. The man who ran Sears into Chapter 11 walked out of Chapter 11 owning what was left of it. The creditors did not go quietly. In April 2019, the Sears bankruptcy estate filed a 110-page lawsuit against Lampert, ESL, and a group the filing called the Culpable Insiders, a group that included board members like Stephen Mnuchin, Lampert's college roommate, who by then was the sitting U.S. Treasury Secretary. The suit alleged that more than $2 billion of assets had been transferred to Lampert and other shareholders beyond the reach of the people Sears owed money to, including the Land's End spinoff, the Seritage deal, all of it laid out transaction by transaction. ESL called the claims baseless and fanciful, and Lampert has always maintained he genuinely tried to save Sears and lost billions of his own money in the attempt. In 2022, after 4 years of litigation, the parties settled for $175 million, most of it paid by insurance companies, with no court ever ruling on who was right. So, this file closes differently than the last two, because this one was never fully adjudicated. Here's what's simply on the record, no allegation required. One man was simultaneously the CEO deciding what Sears sold, the shareholder benefiting when pieces were spun off, the lender collecting interest while it sank, the landlord collecting rent on stores it used to own, and finally the buyer who picked up the remains at the bankruptcy sale. Every one of those roles is documented. You don't need a courtroom verdict to see the problem. When the same person sits on both sides of every table, the company itself stops having anyone whose only job is keeping it alive. Red Lobster lost its real estate. Toys R Us drowned in buyout debt. Sears is the strangest file on the shelf because the call was coming from inside the house. The structure that hollowed it out wasn't imposed by an outside buyer. Amazon didn't do this. Walmart didn't do this. The paper trail runs somewhere much closer to home. Today, the company that was once the largest retailer on the planet is down to a tiny handful of stores. The catalog that invented American home shopping died in the same era its spiritual successor became the most valuable company on earth. The tower still stands in Chicago. It doesn't have the name anymore. If you want more files like this one, the companies you grew up with, and the deals that quietly hollowed them out, that's what we do here at the Liquidation Files. The next file is already open. I'll see you in that one.